Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Play, Learn, Lead ECE Voices of NL. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Sonia. And this month we're going to talk about Emergent Curriculum with our guest, Christine McLean.
Hi, Taylor and Sonia. It's such an honor to be here with your podcast. This is really exciting. My name, as you said, is Christine McLean. Currently, I'm at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm associate professor there and department chair for the Department of Child and Youth Study. But I have a long history in Newfoundland and Labrador as well. I lived and worked here for 28 years in the capacity of early childhood education in a variety of roles, and I'm really pleased to be a part of this podcast. So thank you.
We're so excited to have you. It's an excellent opportunity for us to learn from each other. I think we can just jump right on in Emergent Curriculum. There's so
Oh,
much to
yeah.
unfold. So much. Um, I know that there's one topic that's really still tricky
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of us, and that is the idea of themes versus interests.
Yes.
And I know that we can put it as an interest, you know, well intentioned, but at some point, if we're not cautious, it could become a theme.
Absolutely.
Are you
Yeah.
able to explain what you see as the difference between a theme and an interest?
Oh, what a good question. And Sonia, that question has been asked, I can honestly tell you, for over 30 years that
Wow.
people have been wondering about that. Um, when I was here in the 90s, I was working as a child care consultant with the provincial government, and at the time we produced. And if anybody, any of your listeners remember this time, we produced a program standards manual. We called it the Pink Book because its cover was pink, and in it we started talking about the difference between themes. A thematic based approach and emergent
Mhm.
curriculum. And we were, of course, promoting emergent curriculum. And even
Right.
now, when I think back, I would have done things so differently because even then, when we were giving examples of emergent curriculum, it just looked like a theme only put on a web. Right,
Right.
so
Mhm.
instead of, so it would have the little circle in the middle, and it might have been snow, like interested in snow, and then it had all the things coming off it, but it was basically, looking like a theme. So I can understand where people would get very confused between what's the difference, and then and people were confused when we first put it out, and they thought, oh well, if it has to come from the child, it can't come from the teacher. And so people were trying to listen really hard for like a key word that they thought the children might be interested
Mhm.
in. But again, it would do the same thing. Oh, I heard, Johnny said something about bananas, so let's do bananas, and we'll do everything about bananas, and we'll talk about where they're from and who eats them and everything. When in fact, Johnny might have just been saying, like, "Pass me the bananas," at snack time. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's so just trying to figure out what is their interest. What is the theme. So, I think before we get into that, it might be interesting to look at how our curriculum approaches have evolved since themes. Um, and theme based at the time, and again this would have been the 80s and the early 90s, like a long time ago, was seen as innovative because it was different from 100% teacher directed approach, right, where the teacher
Oh,
just
okay, yeah.
gave the worksheets, gave the crafts and so on. And so we started morphing into themes, thinking, well, that'll help, that'll be the scaffold or the structure upon which we'll put all our ideas.
Mhm.
um, and then, so that was going for a while, but as you were saying, that people struggled with it. How do I know this is a valid idea? Do all of the children in the room need to be interested in this same idea at the same time? Like, that was
Mhm.
another one too. Or do we just go on each individual's child's ideas, and then it's chaos, and we don't know what we're doing, and
Yeah.
so on. And so, it's hard. It's not as easy as theme based approach, right? A theme based approach, you do your planning in August for the whole year, right? September is I am me, I am special. October is Thanksgiving. November is whatever. I used to say that you could go into a Hallmark greeting card store and know what the theme is in the childcare center because
Yeah.
whatever's up there, right? And so that was an easy way to do things, and it also fulfilled the teacher's notion of what a teacher is, right?
Mhm.
You know, because when you take away that hierarchy of teacher student and instead you're saying, well, we're actually going to listen to the children and get our ideas from them, that can be a little scary because you don't know where it's going to lead you. You know, you don't know what you're going to be doing in November or December or January or tomorrow, you know.
Right.
So so it was tricky. So emergent curriculum, I think, has morphed as well. And it's not so much the webs, because I remember, any students, former students from the College of North Atlantic would remember we did concept webs and theme webs and this type of thing. So it just made it more complicated. You know, it was something that people thought, I can't do this. Like, I don't know how to do this and I can't do it. And they missed using the themes because that
Mm.
was something they could do. And so when you look at about how it's evolved, we started learning more about Reggio Emilia, the Reggio Emilia
Mhm.
approach. We started learning more about the project approach, which was Lillian Katz and Sylvia Chard, who worked on developing projects with children, and so it
Right.
might be a project on redesigning the outdoor play area or something, so it might have been a little tweak or a little idea grain of an idea that a child was talking about, or it could have been something from the educator as well, but they just had all the children work on projects together, and that's interesting reading to go back and look at the project approach, and see how that relates. And so then we kind of took that idea of the project approach and the stuff that was happening in Reggio Emilia and started talking about emergent curriculum, where the curriculum emerges from the child.
Right.
Um, and then now we're talking more about inquiry based learning, and we're talking most recently about slow pedagogy, which I maybe if we have time, we can talk about that a little bit more too. So we're moving from this notion of the webs and you know, taking a theme, as you said, taking a theme and turning it into a web and calling it emergent curriculum. So I think, and I know I'm taking a long, long way to answer your question, um, but I think it all starts with real basic stuff, and that is your image of the child, right?
Mhm.
And if
Mm.
you see the children as being um, curious, like for example, in Nova Scotia, our early learning framework is called capable, confident, and curious. And
Okay.
so if you look at children as being capable and competent and confident and curious, then start looking at children differently, and emergent curriculum becomes easier. Like when you understand that children are bringing such a wealth of knowledge and experiences to the table, no matter how old they are. They know a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
once you
Mhm.
start listening to children, you think, wow, they know a lot of stuff. I can learn from them and I can listen and I can ask even, well, what do you want to know more about? Or how can we explore something? So I think our tendency to try to put something into a box and define it, and this is how you do it, and here's step one, and here's step two, and here's step three, is at odds with what emergent curriculum really is. I think sometimes as educators, we put too much pressure on ourselves. And where does that pressure come from? Like sometimes it comes from parents, sometimes it comes from whoever's monitoring the center, the child care consultants
Mhm.
or whoever. Sometimes it comes from other people on the team. Sometimes it comes from yourself. But I think um, the whole notion behind emergent curriculum is that you and the children are going to co-construct knowledge and information together. You're going to co-explore. You're both going to learn. And so you want to look at some of the things that you're interested in as well, too, right? And bring that to the table. And really just getting to building those relationships with children. It's all relationship based. Really getting to know, have authentic conversations with the children, ask them authentic questions, questions they don't know the answer to, and then kind of build your ideas from there. So I don't know if that helps or just creates more questions for you.
No, I think one of the main themes that I got from all of that was that we're learning together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like their curiosity becomes our curiosity and vice
Mm.
versa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that you brought in like the background and the evolution of curriculum as it is right now. Um, because Taylor and I have been in the field for about 9 years now, which is not a super long time. And we're noticing that like sometimes it's a little tricky to navigate coworker relationships and with working alongside educators who have diverse experiences
Mm-hmm.
and their approaches to curriculum as well. And I wonder like how, if you have any ideas of how we can support each other but gently without,
Right.
saying, "Oh, you're old school."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because no one's really old school. It's just that
Yeah.
we're we're all on a different path.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be a good way to approach those conversations
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to become more cohesive of a team for the
Right.
children?
Right. Yeah. Um, I've been in the field for almost 40 years, and I can say that I still am learning, like 100%, still
Right.
learning, still struggling with this. And but every now and then you'll tweak on something that really works. Um, One of the things I think is to have honest conversations. Um, and again, I'll get back, it's relationship building, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's relationship building, realizing that you and your co-educator are going to sometimes mess up, right? You're going to
Yeah.
try things that don't work, but if you have the time to talk about that with them, and be reflective, that reflective practice component, and that isn't always easy. That starts at the
Mhm.
top of the organization, right? That
Yeah.
starts with having a director or the administrator of the center recognize that my staff need to build these relationships, these critical friend type of
Mhm.
relationships, right? The reflective practitioner relationships. And they need to have time to do that. And so, when do we find that time, right? When do we find a time to plan together? Do we have time off the floor to plan together?
Yeah.
Because that's when you have these kind of, where you're able to build that trust, so you can say, let's try something new in the room.
Mm.
But as you're saying, there's some people that you say, you use the term old school, and I think what that means to me is somebody again who has an image of what an educator is in their head, right? That the
Mhm.
educator is the person who teaches,
Right.
who directs, who is the rule maker,
Mhm.
the one who um, talks to the children in ways that are mostly telling them what to do, right? Or what
Right.
not to do.
Mhm.
And so they see that as their role. That might come from their own experiences as children in childcare programs, or their experiences parenting their own children, or it might be a cultural thing. So that's a big a big difference sometimes, is how you view yourself as an educator and how your colleagues view themselves as
Right.
educators. And so just having the time to engage in those questions, sometimes it means having another person, like developing a professional learning community or a community of practice where you can have these kind of conversations. But then there's some really easy, I think, straightforward things that you can do. And again, getting back to Reggio Emilia, for example, you know, if you use loose parts in your room, and I know this is like a complete 180 from not really, but from reflective practice to loose parts. But the one thing I like about loose parts is that it gives you something to reflect upon, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you and your coworker have no idea what the children are going to do with the
No.
loose parts, right? You
No.
have no idea. And children are generally more sophisticated in their play with loose parts than what we would have given them credit for, right? Like we think they're just going to throw them around the room or swallow them or stick them up their nose or something like that, right? And instead they're building these comprehensive designs and structures and so on. And so when you introduce those types of open-ended materials into your classroom, it gives you and your colleague something to talk about, right? Like, did
Right.
you
Yeah.
notice what they did with that? And look at what was happening. Look at the perseverance that that child showed and the problem solving that they did. And, to just kind of talk about those things. So if your colleague, for example, is someone who's really focused on outcomes, learning outcomes, or that feeling like I taught something today, or like when you provide these types of open-ended materials and then reflect upon the learning that happened
Hmm.
during those, the loose parts, or the invitations to play as well too, to have those provocations. Again, we learned that from Reggio Emilia, the provocations, the
Hmm.
invitations, and having fun setting that up, right? And it doesn't need to be based necessarily on a child's idea. Getting back to emergent curriculum, it can be based on just some really cool things that you found, right? That you were
Yeah.
able to
Mm-hmm.
find, and you make those available to the children. And then your colleagues will start to see how that really provokes children's curiosity, right?
I think too, with loose parts, you'll see a more genuine
Mm,
interest emerge
Yes.
because it's not just that, there's a baby in
right,
the dramatic play area.
right.
Oh, they're interested in babies because they're playing with the babies,
Yes, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
But with a loose part,
yeah.
it could be anything,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And you don't know, right? You don't know. And so that hits on another important point too, is the importance of observation and documentation
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
emergent curriculum, right? Where, because it's not enough to just kind of put things out and then go and go move on to another group of children, right? Or
Right.
whatever, or start washing the paint pots or things like that. It's it there's the important thing about these materials and these invitations and provocations is that you also then observe.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hard too, because a lot of times we're trying to turn it into teachable moments, right? We're saying,
Yeah.
oh, you put the red beads with the green beads. How many red beads are there? How many green beads? Can you match them up together? What about the blue beads? Can we? And the kids are like, oh my God, I just wanted to play with
I
these,
just wanted to show
Yeah.
you my thing.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah, I just want to do my thing. Exactly. But then, so we have to kind of, again, redefine what our role is as educators, that we're not there to look for the teachable moments. We're not there to, to focus on what are they learning? What are they, children are learning all the time. Whatever they're doing, they're learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have to teach in order for them to learn. And that's a whole big shift in thinking, right? Like, I don't have to teach a child in order for them to learn something. They learn from the materials in the environment and from their peers and so on. So, so introducing these new kinds of things gives you and your colleagues something to talk about and something in common. And also, as you're documenting them, and hopefully have the time to document and to work with your co-educator on documenting, or even asking, well, what did you notice? What are some things that
Mm-hmm.
you noticed? And I'll incorporate that into what I saw. And then and again, documentation, we could talk about that a whole lot as well too, but that helps us to it's a good tool for reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts or even like recommendations on ways that we could quickly keep notes of
Okay,
the like our
yeah.
observations of what we're
Yes.
noticing?
Yeah. Yeah. Sue Stacy is a wonderful educator. She's in Nova Scotia, but she does, workshops and so on all over the world. And she's written some books on documentation, and she teaches it actually at the Mount. And she talks about raw documentation, where it is something that doesn't have to look pretty. We get so hung up on how our documentation
Yeah.
looks, right?
Yes.
And I did some research. One of my PhD research actually was on documentation and co-constructing documentation with children, like to do the actual documentation
Mm-hmm.
with children
Okay.
authentically. And I worked with educators over a 6 month period, and they did this, they tried it, but they were so nervous about how the final product looked, about how it sounded, and because documentation validates our practice in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
It's evidence that we're doing something besides just wiping noses and putting snack out, right? It's
Yeah.
evidence that, because parents or whoever will say, they played all day, but what did they do really? What, and documentation helps to do that. But if we take that too far, then we freeze, and we are, because it's such a public display of our practice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the raw documentation that Sue Stacy talks about is just messy, just writing things down, having sticky notes, and putting them up on a cupboard, or and as you have thoughts, write it on the sticky note, stick it up there, and invite your coworkers to also add things, even some a snippet of what a child said, and just leave it there and let it grow, and then take it at some point and put it in a form that you're comfortable with. But so that's one of the things that you can do, but always have sticky notes and a marker or a pen somewhere, and the
Okay.
children get used to that. They'll ask you to start documenting things. Like, I've heard educators talk about that, where a child will say, and I'll tell this story. This has happened in Newfoundland. And if again, some people might recognize this story, but it was a center that we were working with, that was voluntarily wanting to improve their quality. Like, we had a whole program called Equip, and some people might remember it. And so there's one center, they wanted to improve their quality so they could be more inclusive. And so they started doing lots of documentation. And one little guy did something. He made a letter, and he called the educator over, and he said, "Look, I made the letter for my name. I made a J," and his name was Justin or something. And the educator said, "Oh, that's great. What'll we do now?" And he said, "I think we should document it." So the children get used to that type of approach. So doing
Mm-hmm.
that type of raw documentation. Another thing that I did with educators is I asked them to take photos, not interrupt the child's play. Like, sometimes we interrupt the child's play by asking them questions about what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
so we have something to document, and in the meantime we've just interrupted their play. So take the photos on your iPad or whatever, and then sit down with the children during another time. It could be during snack time, it could be, during quiet time, it might be that day, it might be in 2 days, and sit with them with the photos and ask them to tell you what was happening, or what do they want people to know about these photos. And so again, I worked with these like educators over 6 months while they were doing this was part of the co-constructing documentation. And some of the educators said, "You know what, I've been in the field for longer than 9 years, like 20 years." And they said, "This is, I think, the first time I've had an authentic conversation with a child." And I thought, and we were both taken aback by that. I thought, why would that be? Like, what are you doing? Like, why, what are you? And she said, "Well, I talk with the children all the time, small talk, right? How's the puppy? What'd you do on the weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Come on over here, do that, put this here." Like, there's all that kind of, but to actually sit and talk with a child, she said, "I would feel guilty doing that, because the other person, my coworker, um, is left with 15 kids while I talk with one child, right?" Um, but the thing is, that's how you find out about their interests, right? Is to
Yeah.
have those
Yeah.
authentic conversations. That's, and when I say authentic conversations, I mean ask questions that you truly don't know the answer uh,
Right.
for, right? So you're
Yep.
not asking how many or what it color, or things like that. And so we both kind of talked about that a bit, and we came up with, because her coworker was also part of this research study, we came up with talking with each other to say, if you see me sitting and talking alone with a child for an extended period of time, meaning like 10 or 15 minutes, um, know that uh, I'll support you when you do the same thing. Like, so yes, you
Mm-hmm.
have 15 other children. Hopefully not, hopefully the children are engaged in the room, and that's the other thing, is how how engaging is your room,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
is really important as well. And then you can just spell each other off. Recognize the importance of that relationship building time with the children, which also helps with emergent curriculum because you're learning more about the children and what they're interested in and how they perceived the photos that you're showing them, what they
Mm-hmm.
did, what kind of stories they were making up about them, and so on. But I think that's another thing we have to look at is when do we in a genuine way talk with children, right? And not just how's the puppy or
Yeah.
how's your baby at home,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to say, okay, now just I'm looking at this photo and I see this and I'm not sure what's going on there. Do you remember what was going on there? And you're going to get a wealth of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to set aside the formalities of what we think curriculum is supposed to look like and instead have an engaging room with engaging materials and engaged educators who are 100% there, right, in the moment with the children. And then we're going to have amazing things happen because you'll go home curious. You'll think, okay, now what could I add to that area, or what materials can I bring outside that is going to extend on what the children were doing, or is going to maybe puzzle them in some way, or engage them in a different way. And that's what emergent curriculum is, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
webs up on a wall.
Yeah, it's like you had mentioned kind of veering away from the whole idea of being stuck on looking for teachable moments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think when you just mentioned about expanding on the learning, I think that that's kind of like a natural progression from teachable moments
Right.
to expansion, giving opportunities.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's still teachable moments, but we're putting those provocations out there
Right. Yes.
so that they can guide their learning.
Yes, and I think what I mean, Sonia, when I'm about that we get worried about teachable moments is that we interrupt the children's play
Yeah.
to draw attention to what they are learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's not necessary. They're still learning it, right? Now certainly there's going to be times, and I know I do it as well too, that I'm going to make comments on, oh, like I noticed you made a pattern. That's really cool. And even how you said that, how you say that. If you say I noticed you made a pattern, they're either going to pick up on it or they're not going to pick up on that, right?
Right.
Like a
Mm-hmm.
child's going to say, yes, I did, and here, this is what I did, or they're just going to keep on playing,
Yeah.
right? So if you say that, you might get some really good stuff, or maybe that isn't what they were interested in. But um, if you said, oh, if you try to turn that into something teachable, that now their focus needs to go to you, right,
Yeah.
and what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying. So there's certainly in your head always you're thinking about, oh, that's really cool what they did, and that's where those ideas for emergent curriculum come from. So
Hmm.
you're right, there are teachable moments, but how we approach those moments,
Right.
right? Are
Right.
we
Yeah.
interrupting the child's plays to take it our agenda? Are we going to take our
Right.
agenda of pre-academic type things, the size and the weight and the length and the color and the shape and or are we going to just kind of have that in our head and go, oh, that's interesting, what they
Hmm.
did,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly draw their attention to it, but in a way that's not intrusive.
Yeah. And I think through this conversation, we all know that the process is key.
Mm-hmm.
But through this conversation, like it's really coming through
Yes.
that, even through our documentation, we want to see what the process was, what
Yes.
was learned, and not be so focused on the outcome. Taylor, I think there was a situation.
Yes. Before you hopped on, I was telling Sonia about a time I had only been in the field a couple years at this point. I was also just starting school, like for the ECE programs. So this was all fairly new to me. Um, but I had found this sciencey thing online, And I was like, I think my friends would really like this. And so then I get all the stuff the next day. Um, we're doing the experiment, and it doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. And I was like, ugh. And it was, I think it was something that I was setting up to be a thing for when they came in for the morning. So my administrator, like my room at the time that I was in, was right by the office. And so she could hear me be like, oh man. So she came over and she was like, what's going on? And I said, I found this really cool thing online that I really wanted my friends to be able to explore. And I followed all the rules, but it's wrong. And she looked at me, she's like, I get that, I appreciate that, but they don't know it's wrong.
Right.
And I was
Yeah.
like, huh? And they were like, they don't know it's wrong. To them, it's still a new, exciting thing. They
Yes,
still get to
Yeah.
explore it. It doesn't have to be right. It's
exactly. Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
That was a light bulb
oh
moment for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like in yeah, it was in my head it had to be right.
Right.
But she
Yeah.
was like, they
Yeah.
don't know the difference.
Yeah. They're not going to say, boy, that Taylor knows nothing about photosynthesis. Why did she
Well,
even
yeah.
embark on that activity? Now, you might have one child who does that.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
one that is well explored and can go, I did that at my house and that's not what that looks like at
Right.
my house. And I'm like, well, I tried my best, thanks.
But even that, wouldn't that be interesting though, if you said, well, I wonder what you did differently
Mm-hmm.
than what I did, right? And then that could lead into a whole big exploration, right? Of the different variables that you can change if you're, making potions or if you're mixing some kind of mixture and so on. But you're right. It is the process of exploration and not the end product.
Yeah.
And I think, again, sometimes we get so worried that we're not going to know the answer to children's questions. So say, like, getting back to the whole themes or emergent curriculum and so on, and say it is a child asks, why do leaves change color in the fall? And so you think, okay, that's a good topic. Let's explore
Mm-hmm.
that topic. Um, but then you think, oh, I better learn about, why do leaves change color in the fall? Because, this is my goal, is that they know this at the end of
Right.
this,
Yeah.
So throw all that out the window, right? It doesn't matter if they know how leaves change. It matters is that they learn how to ask questions, they learn how
Mm-hmm.
to explore, they experiment, they predict, they notice. Like, you can go outside, you can look at different leaves, you can do all that, and never do you ever have to explain photosynthesis to them.
No.
You can ask about their theories, right? And that's,
Mm-hmm.
when I began saying that children have so much knowledge and ideas, so when you're faced with questions like that, turn it right back to them. Like, I don't know, what do you think happens? And you're going to hear fascinating theories from the children on any type of topic that so I would actually advise, even if you do remember how photosynthesis work, that you don't that then that ends the conversation, right? If a child
Yeah.
says, well, why do leaves change color in the fall? And you say, well, it's because the chlorophyll in the leaves are da da da, conversation over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't so when we're quick to try to answer those questions, those teachable moments, think, oh, they're interested in leaves, I'm going to teach them what happens, then we stop the exploration right there, we stop
Right.
the conversation right there. And they will think, well, if I ever need to know how to do something, all I do is ask Taylor. That's not what we want children to learn. We want them to learn, if I ever need to know how to do something, I have to try to research it and figure it out and try different things. And, that's what our goal
Mm-hmm.
is for children, for them to not look to us as the arbiters of knowledge and the keepers of all the information. We want that whole notion of that exploration that they're doing to be that's our goal for the children, right? Is
Yeah.
to be able to explore.
Yeah, and that's going to teach them skills for problem solving as well,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And persevering. Lillian
Yeah.
Kelsey, that I talked about previously with the project approach, she would talk about children's dispositions for learning. And again, this was a long time ago that she talked about it, but I think it's still really important. We all have different dispositions. Some of us jump right in. Some of us hold back and watch what other people are doing.
Hmm.
But so we want children. We want to figure out what are their dispositions, but we also want to encourage them to become those, have that sense of agency and
Hmm.
the act of like, I can do it, right? I
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
I don't need to rely on the grown up to do it for me. And so I guess that's one of the things I would recommend is that you don't jump in with the answer when they have a question, right? How do airplanes stay up in the sky? Do I need to know about aerodynamics? What do I?
You can still, though, I find I'm glad you've been talking about this, because usually my gut instinct is, well, I guess we'll just Google it. But even then, that can still stop the
Stops it.
process.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something like you can incorporate that. It depends on how long they're interested in the topic, right?
Hmm.
And so, you can first get their ideas and their theories, and you might want to test things out. And then if there's a specific question that people are really stuck on, then you might be able to Google it, or
Yeah.
that type of thing. Like I think we still, it's important that children know about the tools, but the
Yes.
most important thing is that they know about their own ability, right? And
Hmm.
how to ask
Yeah.
the questions and so on. But yeah, so technology can be one of the tools, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't start with it, right?
Hmm.
It would be something maybe once they're ready to find out more about, like maybe they're talking about, they want to know about particular animal or something. So
Yes.
come up with your ideas first and try things out, and look for examples, and then maybe you could even keep on your sticky notes, write down the questions that they want to have answered,
Hmm.
right? And say, okay, that's a really good question, let's add that to our questions, we're going to stick it up on the wall here. And then then we'll say, well, how can we figure that out? And hopefully Google isn't the only thing they come up with.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
No, there was this past summer, the oldest room in our childcare, they discovered the wonderful thing called image search on Google.
Oh, yes.
And so, like, they spent, I would say, almost a week, if not more, of finding a bug. And
Oh,
okay,
cool.
here,
Yeah.
I found a bug. Now take a
Yeah.
picture so Google can tell us what it is
Right.
and what it needs to eat so I can put it in my bucket and give it the food it wants.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting you said that they stuck with it for such a long time
Mm-hmm.
as well, too. So I think in cases like that, you might want to hone in their observations a little bit more. Like, you're taking a picture of it, but what else do you notice about it? Like, let's look at it.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you notice about this bug? What can we put it? What can we do besides an image search? We can, look, is it similar to some of the bugs we've seen before? Like, get them to predict. What do you
Yeah.
think Google is going to say? Right? Like, we
Yeah.
already learned about, ants, and we learned about this bug and that bug and the earwigs and the so on. So now you're looking at this bug. What do you think Google's going to say? Like, what are some of the things that are different in this bug, and what are some things that
Mm-hmm.
are the same than that what we saw? So again, I think just trying to get them to see themselves, that again,
Mm-hmm.
that sense of agency, right? That they are
Yeah.
also knowledge creators and knowledge explorers and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love I'm going back to that outcome again.
Right. Yeah.
And the fact that we're we're often focused on learning outcomes.
Hmm.
Even if we're trying to get that curiosity to come out, how can we reframe our
Mm.
minds
Hmm.
so that we're still allowing for those learning outcomes to happen, but we're kind of like veering away from the plan, letting the children lead?
Yeah.
How can we rephrase, like,
Yeah.
get our
Well, one
minds
of the
in that?
things that I'd be really interested in knowing is, why do we think we need to be focused on outcomes? The one of the wonderful things about the early years is that children don't pass or fail childcare,
Yeah.
right? And that the only thing the only criteria for entering school is how old you are.
Mhm.
That's all it is. It's not do you know your letters, it's not do you know your numbers. Now when you let children have those long periods of unhurried time to explore in an engaging environment, you're going to see all kinds of numeracy, you're going to see all kinds of
Mhm.
literacy. When the children see the meaning and the function behind writing,
Right.
they want to put a sign on their block structure, do not knock this down, right?
Yeah.
So that comes naturally, that or as long as they have the materials, we always want to have lots of paper and pencils and markers and things and clipboards. Best thing to have in your room, because it is a portable writing surface, but also it makes you feel really important to have clipboard, write
Yes.
things in it, and all of a sudden they're taking a poll on how many children have cats and how many children have dogs, and like it's just a
Hmm.
wonderful thing. So we get hung up on outcomes, and I don't know why. And if you were to look at the early learning frameworks, well, I do know why, but I'll say it's not necessary. If you looked at the provincial jurisdictional early learning frameworks across the country, none of them have outcomes in
Right.
terms of
Yeah.
required outcomes,
Yeah.
right? They
Yep.
have learning goals, they have some learning outcomes in there, but these are guides for practice. They're not assessment tools.
Right.
None of them are assessment tools. So, for us to, and whoever, whether that is being forced upon us or whether we think we need to do it to justify our work with the children, um, there nowhere is it. I shouldn't say they don't have learning outcomes in them. They do have what they call learning outcomes, but there's no requirements, right, to that
Yeah.
children need to meet
Mhm.
these learning outcomes. The learning outcomes, I think, are more for us to say, is our room one that supports children's curiosity, right? So say if a learning outcome is something to do with discovery and invention, right? That the children, that we should be seeing that as an assessment tool of our own practice and our own room. So not whether the child's doing it, are we setting up the environment in which this can occur, right?
Right.
Hmm.
If there's nothing new or interesting in our room, if we use the same materials time after time, and if we don't give large blocks of time for children to use the materials, then yeah, you're not going to see the discovery and invention, you're not going to see the communication, you're not going to see the things that we would see as learning outcomes, but it's on us, right? It's
Yeah.
not it's not on the children. So I think if we get hung up on it, then we should phrase it in terms of how is our practice helping to support children's learning and development.
Mm.
Not
Yeah.
whether our children learning. Like
Right.
we can't
Yeah.
say that, and we don't need to. There's no need anywhere for us to have a requirement that children need to know X and X before they
Mhm.
move from the toddler room to the 3 to 5 year old room, or to the and notice I said 3 to 5 rather than preschooler, because I'm trying to get away from the term preschooler, because all of these things we're saying, like imagine, like I'm a pre-senior right now, right? I don't want to be called a pre-senior. I don't want to have somebody mushing up my food now because I'm not going to have teeth in 15 years and I need to learn how to eat soft food. But why? So when we call children a preschooler, it's like we're identifying them
Right.
as a school student, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
that really shapes, I think, our, again, getting back to our image of the child and our image of ourselves as teachers. So yeah, they will be going to school sometime, just like I'm going to be retiring sometime. But I don't need to have several years of preparation for that, right? We should
Yeah.
let the 4 year old have the best 4 year old year they can have, and the
Yeah.
3 year old be three. Let's let them be three and not consider them what they're going to be. So if we look at that, then the outcomes um, are things that we don't need to get as hung up on. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have an enriching environment that supports children's learning and development, right? But
Hmm.
Mhm.
and so I don't know if I'm just kind of saying this in a confusing way or not, but I think we need to rethink why we have to justify for example, a play-based program by saying, well, because children learn A, B, C, D, and E, like they
Mhm.
learn all of
Mhm.
these things. Children, uh, play is value in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be looking at play as a means in which children meet outcomes. So now that's a big stretch and it's a long way for people to go, but I think we shouldn't feel like we're not doing our job if we just let children play for the afternoon, right?
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
are in fact doing our job. Now, if we went off and didn't pay attention to what the children are doing while they're playing, then we're not doing our job, right? Or if we
Yeah.
didn't intentionally set out an engaging environment, or if we didn't reflect upon what we see, then we're not doing our job. But,
Right.
you know, anyway, that's, you know, again, all of these things we could talk about for ages. But there's certainly these are questions that people have struggled with, for quite a while and still are struggling with. And I am too. Like I know my default is kind of to look for teachable moments and to try to justify, the value of the play and so on. And so I have to work hard at going, okay, let's just enjoy, let's just be in this moment with these children. And that brings me to just I mentioned slow pedagogy.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to let you know, Alison Clark has written a really good book about slow pedagogy, and it's a resource that I would recommend to people. And it's just basically saying that it's a pedagogy that prioritizes that time for play and that time for building relationships and time for learning, right? But it's not concerned about, just in the name, slow pedagogy. It means that we're not hurrying children, right?
Right.
We're
Yeah.
not expecting them to catch up or to, be preschoolers, right?
Mhm.
We're letting them be 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and we're looking at the value of play on its own rather than as preparation for the next stage of development. So, it's something that supports creativity and imagination, and it means that you are giving yourself time to listen to children's ideas and hear about children's experiences. So it's something, I think it's probably what we're going to be talking about next, rather than emergent curriculum, is that we're going to be looking at
Okay.
that slow pedagogy. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. I love how much our field evolves.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
It's it's sometimes a little hard
Hmm.
to soak it all in,
Absolutely.
but just if you're willing to learn, and all the professional learning opportunities that we get
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
and taking those opportunities
Yeah.
too. Um I'm really excited to hear what all the viewers have to say after this because I don't know if you noticed, but we're doing a professional learning community alongside of
Oh,
this podcast.
wonderful. Wonderful.
So each month, at the end of the month, there's going to be a PLC session
Oh, wonderful.
based on the topic of the podcast for the month. So it's going to be very interesting to
Yeah.
hear what everyone takes away from this episode for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us today, Christine. I have learned so much and I feel like my mind is relaxing and
Oh, yes.
I'm allowing myself to slow down. I
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
Yeah.
slow pedagogy.
Right, right. And I think just, to say that we need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like having that, recognizing that discomfort is part of all this learning and evolution, as you
Yes.
said, right? So I think if we
Yep.
just kind of, and I'm so glad to hear that you'll have a time to talk with others and reflect on it, and
Yeah.
maybe think, what was she talking about? But anyway, that's fine.
Yeah, so
Oh,
thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing everyone's ideas that they take away from this. And hopefully, you'll get to listen to the episode when it airs.
Absolutely. I
We'll
might,
send you the link.
or I might just cringe and go, ah, but yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You're so welcome.
Bye.
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 Can I just start by saying that that was almost a mind-boggling and informative conversation, and not mind-boggling in a oh I can't believe it, but just there was so much information coming in that
Mhm.
were so many oh
Lots of
moments.
aha
Lots
moments,
of
yeah.
ahas. I get it. Okay, this makes sense. Or, you know, I understood it in theory. Oh, that's what it looks like in practice.
Yeah. And I know for myself, when I did the diploma program, we got the feeling that emergent curriculum was still fairly new. It's fairly fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't that we weren't taught properly, because I feel as though what I learned is a lot of what we just discussed. It's just that the confidence wasn't quite there because the
Yeah.
field was still in transition.
Because how many curriculums were there in the diploma program? Three or four?
3.
Three. Because feel like even because I did the program online part time. So it
Mhm.
took me 4 years to do the program.
Right.
And I'm fairly certain that I did like curriculums one and two very early on,
Yeah.
and then curriculum three way near the end.
Right.
And there was a huge difference in between.
And curriculum 3 was mostly theory based
Yeah,
from my recollection.
I believe so. But it was still like there were similarities, but you could
Yeah.
tell that there had been learning, there had been development in what it was
Yes.
in that time frame
Yeah.
alone.
And that just goes to show, like, how important professional learning is in our field,
Mhm.
because there's so many changes and so quickly, because there's so much research still
Yep.
happening for early learning for our field.
Mhm.
Um yeah, and I through the conversation, I really picked up on the importance of valuing the children's knowledge base and their intelligence and
Yeah.
their creativity and their skills and abilities, and how much we unintentionally undermine that intelligence and that knowledge and that creative skill by
Yeah.
asking all those questions, like, or making these blanket statements. Oh, you're using red. There is value in that, of course,
Yeah. But
but how much it really got driven home from Christine mentioning the importance of having those genuine conversations, getting them thinking, building those relationships,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, cuz if you're constantly focusing on constantly having teachable moments, you
Hmm.
really lose out on building those relationships with the children. Even if your interactions are always positive,
Yeah.
it's, ugh, they're just going to come talk to me about what color my picture is.
Hmm.
Or, you know, oh, what shape did I use? Or
Yeah.
things like that. It's more like work to them
Yeah.
almost, because they're like obviously not verbatim what they're thinking, but it's like, oh, I just wanted to draw a picture
Yeah.
and now you're making me do all this extra work when I just wanted to say, here's my family.
Hmm. And I had an afterthought too, when we were talking a little bit about how, if we're constantly making like comments about their play, how we can stifle that play.
Yeah.
I wonder how much our practice would change and how much their play experiences would change if we started to do what we ask them to do for each other and
Mhm.
ask permission to enter their play.
Yeah.
Because give them the power of yes or no.
Mhm.
And then they'll continue their play if they say no, and we respect that.
Yeah, and kind of like
And it's
back
modeling for each other too, right?
yes.
Yeah.
No, and I kind of makes me think like I off the top of my head, I can guarantee you I have been guilty of watching a play and going, "Oh,
Hmm.
are you being a pirate?" I don't know. I don't remember like the
Yeah.
but oh, are you being a pirate? And they just like they all stop and look at you
Yep.
like, "No."
Yeah.
And either it takes them a little while to get back into that because I've
Hmm.
totally like I didn't just like make a slight glitch. I totally threw their play
Yep.
for a loop. Or I've also seen where I've unintentionally shifted the play
Yes.
because they switched to my perception.
Yeah.
Because instead of me saying, "Oh, what are you like?" "Oh, it sounds like you guys are having fun," or like any type of engaging conversation that does not involve me insinuating what they're doing.
Hmm.
I lost my track of thought.
I think too, if we make
Like,
comments like you just mentioned, it looks like you're having fun, they're going to be more apt to explain to us, yeah, we are, we're blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, like, oh, you looks like you guys are having a lot of fun. Yeah, I am a ghost and he is a vampire. It's like, oh, that is not what I thought. And there's times where I have just said, looks like you're having fun. And in my brain, I think they're playing will stick with the theme that I've chosen. It's pirates and it's ghosts and vampires, and I'm like, this is the oddest form of
Mhm.
ghosts and vampires I've ever seen, but okay.
Yeah. But I think that, we're not going to, if we stick to that just basic statements
Mm-hmm.
and letting them come to us and explain to us on their terms,
Yes.
we're going to build better relationships because we're not going to alienate ourselves and make ourselves look like
Yes.
fools.
Right.
Um yeah, but definitely I think that that was really important to me what she was talking about, making those genuine conversations to build those relationships and getting the children thinking. And in the process, the topic of getting them thinking, one thing she mentioned was co-constructing documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that was based around our thought of how important it is to think about the process,
Yes.
right? And not the product so much.
Yeah.
But I like that idea of co constructing documentation because reflective practice is so important in life.
Yes. Reflective practice and critical thinking.
Hmm. And when you think about it too, like some people might argue that those two skills are a little advanced, but really, nothing's too advanced unless we make it too advanced.
Yeah, like it's like anything. There is steps
Yeah.
in the development of critical thinking and reflective practice because critical thinking is even just if I if I knock Sonya's tower over,
Hmm.
she's going to get mad.
Yeah.
Like just thinking those steps ahead is
Hmm.
considered critical thinking.
Yeah.
and or going, "Oh man, Sonia got really mad at me. Probably because I knocked over her tower." That's reflective practice.
If I do this, this will be
This is
the
oh
consequence
yes.
or the outcome. And when we talk about critical thinking and reflective practice, those two pieces are so important in problem solving.
Yeah, you can't really problem solve without them.
No,
Success continuously successfully.
right. Because reflective practice comes into play near the end of the problem solving process. You
Yes.
know, just thinking back on, okay, that was the solution we came up with. This was the outcome. Oh, that worked. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll work
We
again in the
can
future,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But yeah, and not a lot of these things that we've thought about are completely emergent curriculum. But that's the thing. Emergent curriculum is how they learn.
Yeah.
And these
Just
are the key outcomes that we came from this conversation. And you need to follow emergent curriculum to properly gain these
mhm.
skills in the classroom.
And the other thing that she said that is like really I had an equal parts moment of aha and well duh
Hmm.
for myself, not like oh sure everybody should know this a bit, but a well duh like well Taylor, you should have known that.
Hmm.
Um was also the importance of not always answering their questions right away,
Hmm.
even if you know the answer.
Hmm.
And even if you don't know the answer, you don't need to look it up right away.
Yeah.
Allowing them to use their brains, like thinking about it, their imagination to come up with what the answers possibly could be. Like sure you
Yeah.
can eventually look up that answer if you don't know, or you could eventually give them the correct answer depending on what type of question it is and if
Yeah.
what kind of answer they're looking for, but still allowing them that time to investigate themselves.
Yeah. And I truly feel like I am guilty of doing that,
Oh,
of
very much so. It's so
giving them the answers because,
especially where we have the iPads.
yeah,
So when they come and they're like, Taylor, what does a giraffe eat? Well, I don't know. Let me look it up.
yeah,
There you go. But that doesn't really teach them anything other than they eat leaves. I think from trees. I'm guessing they have really long necks. That's my assumption. But um like we're not teaching them to fully be inquisitive.
no,
They're just showing them where to go to find the answers without thought.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, w- when they become old enough that children are asking them questions,
Mhm.
we want them to be able to help the children to use those thinking skills.
Mhm.
But we run a risk of 15, 20 years down the road, that's all people are going to be doing is Googling everything.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
there's no problem with Googling your answer to figure out the right answer, but there's value in inquisition and thinking.
well like especially cuz like with googling, you get the forefront answer.
Yeah.
Without the inquisition, you're there's so much more information you could be missing out on.
Well, is Google going to tell you giraffes eat leaves from tall trees because they have long necks.
That
Google's
exactly.
not going to tell you that,
No, it's just gonna say they
right?
eat trees.
Yeah.
And again, there's times and places for those kinds of answers, sure.
Hmm.
But there's also so much more time and place, especially where the children are right now in childcare,
Yeah.
to take it that much further.
Well, and too, like, even if their answers are not correct, even if they're completely out to lunch, we're fostering
Creativity.
creativity
Yeah.
and imagination
Mm-hmm.
and innocence.
Yes. Because you know what? There are some things where you don't always have to have the right answers to.
No.
Because really, how I don't know if this is going to be the right word or not, but how damaging is it if for the first few years of their lives they think giraffes eat watermelons? Nobody is going, they're not going to be zookeepers in those next few years.
No, and if they go to a zoo with a slice of watermelon, the zookeeper is going to say, please don't feed that to the giraffe.
Well, right.
They're going to have
Like,
adults who are going to help them.
yes.
But yeah, no, like there's there's value in the creativity, the imagination, and then they will learn.
Yeah.
I mean, I know when I was a child, I thought all dogs were boys and all cats were girls. And I think
Well,
that's a pretty common thing.
but also, we turned out just fine, and we didn't have the internet when we were little. We just had to figure it out ourselves, anyways.
And I do not call my dog a boy. My dog is a girl.
I mean, I used to think my dad invented all of these fancy foods that he let me believe he was the inventor of, but turns out they're very generic, basic recipes like the Monte Cristo that is just a grilled cheese with ham in it. I thought it was this great invention because I didn't have Google to tell me differently.
But, you know, there's value in Google, but there's also
But it's
value in
value in.
imagination and thinking
Yeah.
and coming to those conclusions with that reasoning.
Yeah.
But definitely an eye-opening conversation because I think I was so tied up in how to properly do planning to follow
Yes.
emergent curriculum when
Mm-hmm.
there is so much more Christine has shown us and opened our eyes to
Yes.
that emergent curriculum is about. And I'm so grateful that she joined us because I learned a lot.
Yeah, I feel it was so eye-opening. Like there's so
Yeah.
many things that seemed like they should be intuitive but just really weren't.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I do think part of it is, kind of overcomplicating it for myself.
Yeah.
And something that I've found very helpful, not just not just with this episode with Christine, but across so many of the episodes that we've done, is that it takes like these conversations that we're having is almost making all these concepts accessible to my brain.
Mhm.
They're undercomplicating them and making them more easy to understand, I guess. Like less
Yeah.
scary, less theory focused.
Yeah.
Because I know that's definitely somewhere where I kind of get stuck sometimes is, okay, here's the theory, but my brain can't compute how that looks.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And and again, the connection. from, you know,
Mhm.
one part of our practice to the next. Um and this was part of our little mini series on like goal 3.
Mhm.
Next month we're moving into goal 4, which is social
Yes.
contribution. And I find it interesting yet again that we have made the connection because problem solving skills are one of the most valuable skills that we're going to teach the children for
Yeah.
their future in
Mhm.
society. And the fact that we've connected the subtopic of critical thinking and reflective practice from the Emergent Curriculum episode,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's so important in problem solving. So, yeah, social contribution next month. Very excited for
Exciting.
that one.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us this month, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.
Bye.